In a village tucked somewhere between Washington and Moscow, there were a great many people who were unhappy with their lives. It's not like their lives were bad, they just felt unsatisfied, unfulfilled, like there could be more to their lives. They worked, often hard. They grew their own food. They even would sometimes get some time to talk to one another and share a moment. They would sometimes come up with ideas of what they could do, and sometimes they would do them. But mostly everyone wished they could live like the kings and queens. They wished to live in luxury and for everyone to know their names. They wished to have adventures. They wished to command armies and have power. And they wished they didn't have to work. They mostly lived like this and wished these things on a daily basis. Until one day, along came a magician. A colorful gypsy wagon pulled by a funny-looking pony pulled into the village square, and out stepped this slender figure wearing a long brown hooded cloak. Sewn onto the back of the cloak were a pair of eyes. As the magician reached into his wagon to pull out a bag, a crowd began to form. This was something new. The magician, seeing the crowd, said to them, "I have in my bag something special, a way for you to be more, a way for you to live like kings and queens, a way for you to live your dreams, a way you won't have to work, it seems, and it will only cost you a few of your rings." And with that, he drew from his bag what he called a picture. The first woman stepped up to see this picture and was immediately surprised to see that she was in the picture. This picture was more like a mirror in that it reflected an image of yourself. But the more she looked into the picture, the more she could see herself living out her wildest dreams. She turned to the magician and asked, "How much?" And with a smile, he said, "For you, madame, just one ring." The only ring she had on was her wedding band, which she immediately slid off and handed to the magician. She ran away clutching her picture giddily. After this, there was a line. Every villager wanted to see their picture, and once they did, they could not get rid of their rings fast enough. As the magician left the town, every villager stood, transfixed, staring lovingly at their pictures. A week later, the magician returned. The villagers already knew he was coming, for they had seen in their pictures that he was to return with something that would help them get even closer to their dreams. They were excited for this, for where before they wished they didn't have to work, now they absolutely detested anything that wasn't in their pictures. They had all lined up, staring at their pictures in their hands. They weren't so much smiling as before, but just couldn't look away. The magician proposed, "Give me your houses. You will no longer have to worry about your responsibilities because you will have none, and you will get more time to do what you desire." And with that, the people gave him their houses, and in fact, all of their belongings, without so much as looking up. He smiled as he looked around at the villagers who had just given him the village, and they sat there stuck in the palm of their own hands. You can still see the descendants of these villagers today staring into their palms, imagining that they are living their dreams through some pictures. They give away their whole lives for these pictures. They even get their kids, who would dare to call them back into this physical world and pull them from their dreams, their own pictures, so they never need to know the sting of boredom that ushers forth creativity. They never need to worry about responsibilities that lead to true freedom, because they're free to stare at their pictures. They're free to live in their minds and not have to worry about all the life they're missing out on in the physical. I wrote this in response to the parents of infants and toddlers who are giving them hours of screen time, watching television or YouTube or movies before they've even had a chance to learn about this world. They're conditioning them to live their whole lives through a screen and not know a thing about life, self-responsibility, or directing themselves. And that's why these kids are so delayed. And so I want to share with you this study that I just recently came across. This study is Screen Time at Age 1 and Communication and Problem-Solving Developmental Delay at 2 and 4 years. So they did this study with 7,097 mother-child pairs, and half of them were boys, half of them were girls. And they wanted to find out how much screen time affects a child's development. And what they found was they broke this group up into parents who did less than an hour of screen time, parents that did 1 to 2 hours of screen time, 2 to 4 hours of screen time, and then more than 4 hours of screen time. And this is all under the age of 1 year old, okay? Now, the part of the reason why they did this study, they said, was because they recognized that it's recommended to have less than 1 hour of screen time per day, and especially under 1 year old, right? I think it's under 2 years old, actually. And the official recommendation is no screen time. And what's defined as screen time is television, movies, YouTube, mobile devices, iPads, tablets, all those sorts of things. That's all considered screen time, right? And so about half of this study was less than 1 hour of screen time a day. But half of it was more than 1 hour of screen time a day. About 30% was 1 to 2 hours. Then another 18% was 2 to 4 hours, which is a lot. And then 4% roughly being 4 hours or more a day. And here's what they found. Guess what? There were significant delays, developmental delays at 2 and 4 years old from these kids having watched more than 1 hour of screen time a day. Now, I couldn't tell you what less than 1 hour means other than less than 1 hour. It could be 0, it could be 15 minutes, I don't know. But I can tell you this, anyone who was doing more than 1 hour was reporting themselves that, hey, we are having a delay here. We can see that there's a delay, which is pretty significant. The interesting thing about this study is it's following around 1 year olds. And they're saying that some of these parents are giving their kids more than 4 hours of screen time a day. And if you really consider, at 1 year old, there's a lot of napping, sleeping, and development going on. 4 hours a day is a lot. That's a lot for anyone, really. But especially for a baby, they don't even have time to really take in the world around them. And of course, that's going to cause a developmental delay, because what's going to happen is, well, how are they supposed to recognize things in the world? They've been spending all their time on a screen before they even get the chance to know what the outside world is. They're completely zoned in on a screen. And some of the developmental delays that they found were gross motor skills, fine and gross motor skills delays, and there were delays in their problem-solving abilities at 2 and at 4 years old. And then there were delays in communication, of course, right? And so it's interesting because I get it. Parents put their kids in front of a tablet or a phone or whatever to sort of pacify them for the moment. They may be busy, they're doing other things, and they want to make sure that, hey, child's not going to cry, something like that. But instead of involving their child in what they're doing, or I know it takes more effort to do these things. I'm not being completely stupid here, but think about this. If you just go to that, of course your child is going to develop delays. It's the same way like using a pacifier. If you use a pacifier, it could be useful actually to use a pacifier at times. However, if that is your go-to, as soon as the baby cries, you can miss certain cues, like when the baby's hungry or when the baby is like feeling pain and discomfort, or anything really, because you're just saying, oh, just stop crying, but you're not actually being present there with your child. The same thing with just handing your child a tablet. You're just saying, here, just watch this. Don't make any fuss. Don't bother me. I've seen parents who will go through grocery stores with a tablet in the child's lap, right? Instead of engaging with them and showing them, hey, look at this. There's this food here. There's these colorful boxes, whatever. Even if the child's 1 year old, they can do that, right? But if you don't do that, what happens is they're unaware of all these things. And so that develops a developmental delay. And then they're like, because now they're just discovering that. Does that make sense? They're just now discovering, oh, there's this thing here. Like, you didn't know that? Like, how are you expecting them to learn that? You didn't expose them to that. All you exposed them to was this screen in their hands. And that's it. Who wants to live their life through a screen? That is so silly. Here's another huge part of this study. They said, looking at people's faces is when our brains turn on to figure out how to interact with them. If children don't have enough time to play or are handed a tablet to pacify negative emotions, that could prevent the important developmental milestones that is the ability to navigate discomfort. Now, when I read that, what I see is, whoa, holy crap. Because they're saying they know your brain turns on when you're looking at somebody's faces. When you're looking at somebody's face, not faces, hopefully. But what that means is they are aware that when you're wearing a mask, you are covering up your face, which also causes developmental delays, of course. And so this study was done before, 2020 with COVID and everything. Imagine what it would be like today, now, knowing that kids were developing and growing, in this infancy stage over those last 2-3 years where people were completely covering up their faces. What does that mean for the development of that child then? And given more screen time, right? Because you have to assume they were given more screen time because they were at home and not going out as often. So there's less to do outside, right? So something to consider is what's happening to that child. How are you supporting them to develop effectively? And I love that it says developing through discomfort, because there are some things that are just boring in life. They're not fun. But how is the child supposed to understand or develop within themselves how to navigate discomfort, how to do something with themselves when they are bored, be creative, right? Like find something to do, soothe themselves. But instead, they always have something in their hand where they're going, this will entertain me. And if I'm not entertained, then I don't know what to do. I need to be constantly entertained. I need to be constantly fed. You can't be creative if you're constantly only taking in entertainment, right? So now here's the parallel with adults, right? Adults also spend a lot of time on screens, but adults also spend a lot of time in their minds. They're not actually physically present here in this real physical world. And so they're, in a way, teaching their children to do the exact same thing, but just with technology. Children don't have a mind that's developed like adults do, but yet you're pushing them into the exact same thing at this really early stage, at this really early age, by handing them a screen where they can basically do the same thing that you're doing in your mind. participating in anxieties and thoughts that aren't even real. I wrote that story in the very beginning because that story is basically people are imagining, whether it's through the screen or in their own mind, their dream life. But they're satisfied to some extent with just their imaginings and not actually going out and making it happen, living in this real world, communicating with other people. And I'm saying that because if we would just be here, be present, and see what's going on in the world around us, we could work together to make a better life for all of us, the best possible life that we could possibly have. That would be amazing. But everyone's been pacified to a large degree by just staring at a screen and going, yeah, I wish I could do that. And imagining that you're living vicariously through these characters that you find on the screen and imagining that to you on a subconscious level, right? And that gives us the good feelings that we would hoped to have experienced if we did those things. And that's seemingly enough for a lot of people. Well, it's not enough for me, and it's not enough for your children, because we want them to actually live a good life, actually live it. What's the point of coming to this planet to live just standing in one spot, staring at a screen, and not actually participating in life? That doesn't make any sense, right? Let's actually live it to the fullest, be the best that we could be, and get the most that we can out of this life, and give the most of ourselves to this life as well. And here's a point that I wanted to bring up as well. If all of society is doing this, does that make it okay? Does that make it the kind of life that you want to live? Do you just want to be like the rest of society? Because just because another parent's doing it or a whole bunch of other parents are doing it doesn't necessarily make it okay. And in fact, it's just people going along because they see others doing it. That's what we call peer orientation, right? And now we have an entire generation of kids who've just been brought up entirely on screens. They're saying that most kids, I think it's 50%, will have a phone with internet access by the time that they're 11. And about 20% of them will have a phone with internet access by the time they're 8. 8 years old. Why do they need internet access on their own, unsupervised, at 8? You know, what's also interesting is at that same age, 8 years old, is when most boys are first exposed to pornography. The average age that a child is exposed to pornography is at 8 years old. Interesting. Now, that's also interesting because only 20% of boys are getting a phone with internet access, but I bet they're sharing it with other kids who perhaps don't have a phone with internet access, but go to the same school or hang out with those other kids. And the parents don't even realize that they're hanging out with them and the other kid has a phone. And they can go on the internet and they can search up whatever they'd like. And so we need a huge shift in our society, but that means each of us as individuals need to make decisions for ourselves of, is this the life that I want for myself, for my children, or do I want something different? And if I want something different, I'm going to have to do things differently, right? I can't just look to everyone else and follow what they're doing, because clearly that's not working. This is not the way that I want to go, right? If you want to be associated with other people who are actually considering what is best for themselves, for their family, and for the community at large, then you're in the right spot. Subscribe to this channel and send me a message. I can actually hook you up with those other people so that you're not just seeing me from behind a screen, but you're actually interacting and participating in that community, right? Because if you're not part of the larger social group that's everyone giving their kid a phone at 8 years old, or giving them screen time 4 hours before they're even 2 years old, well, then you're going to be ostracized. People are going to look at you funny. And that's okay, but it's way more supportive when you have a group of other people who are also doing the same thing, and they can encourage you. They can remind you why you're doing this. You can see the difference really clearly between the kids who their parents actually care, and they're like, no, we're not doing screen time, and I know it's going to take a little bit more effort, but that's what we're going to do, and we're going to develop you in the very best way. And the parents who just say, it'll all turn out okay. Because you can see it's not okay. And even if it were okay, why are we settling for just okay? Why not giving our kids the best? We can give our kids the best. Our kids deserve the best, and we can make that happen. So let's do it.